minutes with Deputy Barry.
Thanks, Orla. I think the response of the Government tonight to this bill is frankly shocking. In the presentation that was given, they speak that in 32 years, a generation away, in the year of 2050, we might be able to reduce our emissions by 80%. But it's actually not even true, because the Climate Change Advisory Council has already said within the last month the Government will miss the 2020 targets. And Professor Fitzgerald of that council pointed to the high dependency on oil, coal and peat as being the primary reason. So you can announce very noble things and very positive and important things like sustainable energy projects and like electric vehicles. But this bill and the reduction in fossil fuel consumption is actually critical to meeting those targets. And the Government has no answer and no solution. And even as well, the things that they talk about, resources to stimulate the take-up in sustainable energy, all private, by the way, so we've no control. It's not even a government-led project, which at least would be a bit more serious. It's reliant on the private sector to do it. Now, I'm not really surprised because, obviously, lagging behind has been mentioned already. For 20 years, the Government sat and took advice from the likes of Mr Conor Skene, who's a climate change denier, was advising Fine Gael for 20 years, right up until the period when Minister Hogan was there. So it seems it's only latterly in the last couple of years that they've actually accepted the idea that there's a problem with climate change. Mr Skene's attitudes on homelessness and the environment are very similar. They're ill-informed and they're ignorant. And at one point, an architect was drawing diagrams trying to disprove expert climatologists, saying there was no problems with polar bears, that it was all the fault of local tribes. I mean, this is the rubbish and dross that the Government have been listening to. They really, really need to catch up and take this seriously, because the reason tonight why the gallery is full of younger people is because this is a serious issue for young people. They take it a lot more seriously than obviously the establishment do. And the first thing that this bill says is that there is an emergency, that the effects of climate change are being felt around the world right now, and we need to implement radical policies in how our society operates. The 1-degree rise in global temperatures over the last number of years has led to a sharp increase in extreme weather events. We've seen it in Ireland ourselves, and it's often the poorest that are hardest hit. And while it's all very romantic to listen to Deputy Healy-Rae, and we all love a log fire, this is a serious issue where massive areas of the planet are becoming uninhabitable, where up to 25 million people are being displaced, and where, if we keep going, that number will rise, dramatically in the next number of years. The current rate of CO2 pollution in the atmosphere has increased to a level not seen in 3 million years. So we have to dispense with some traditions that weren't good traditions. That's the reality. It's also wrecking nature and the ecosystems, as has been mentioned, irreversible damage done to some of the most beautiful things on our planet. Now, scientists agree that we're in the process of a 6th mass extinction of animals and wildlife, a biological annihilation. And this bill argues that it can't be left to big business and the private sector to voluntarily agree that at some stage in the future they'll tackle climate change. They're going to put their profits first. And that is why, on the left, we put forward an alternative to capitalism destroying the environment. There are 90 major companies that have created 63% of the cumulative emissions. Exactly the same companies that this bill targets. And they're not going to simply leave fossil fuels and profits in the ground. We need a completely different type of society to successfully stop climate change. We need to challenge the rule of the 1% who control these companies, the big businesses who are the major polluters, so that we can take control of our resources and our planet. And we can then invest the billions of euro needed to really transition from a carbon-based economy to a green economy.